Good afternoon, and I would like to welcome everyone to the September 22nd, 2022 work session of the Henrico County School Board. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the school board approve the agenda for today's meeting.
Moved by Ms. Ogburn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kinsella. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda is approved. The next item on the agenda is closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I move that the school board go into closed session for the discussion of matters covered under item A1 of section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended, pertaining to the assignment, appointment, performance, salaries, disciplining, and release of contract for specific school board employees and deliberation regarding the hearing officer's recommendation pertaining to school board employee grievance case number 22-23-E-2.
Motion made by Reverend Cooper. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Atkins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are now in closed session. We will reconvene the work session at the conclusion of our closed meeting. Welcome back. Is there a motion to certify closed session?
I move that the school board certify by recorded vote that to the best of each school board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Moved by Reverend Cooper. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kinsella. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The closed session has been certified. The next item on the agenda pertains to our closed session discussion where we discuss the recommendation received from the hearing officer pertaining to school board employee grievance case 22-23-E-2. Is there a motion for the action that we would like to take?
I move the school board adopt the following resolution for employee grievance case number 22-23-E-2. Whereas the school board of Henrico County, Virginia referred employee grievance case number 22-23-E2 to a hearing officer pursuant to Henrico County School Board Regulation P4-10-001-R. And whereas a hearing was held on August 16, 2022, and whereas the school board has thoroughly considered the hearing officer's report and recommendation dated September 9th, 2022, the transcripts of the hearing, written closing arguments, and the exhibits submitted by the superintendent and the grievant. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on September 22nd, 2022, the school board adopts and incorporates herein the hearing officer's report and recommendation, and the grievance dismissal is effective immediately. Be it further resolved that the clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to the grievant, counsel for the superintendent, and the chief human resources officer, who is directed to place a copy of this resolution and the hearing officer's report and recommendation in the grievance personnel file.
Moved by Ms. Kinsella. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Atkins. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The school board adopts and incorporates herein the hearing officer's report and recommendation, and the grievance dismissal is effective immediately. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. For the first item, item 5.01, titled Destination 2025 School Accountability Ratings, I would note that when we planned to bring you this item, we anticipated that the Virginia Department of Education was to release the 22-23 accountability ratings. By today, those were not released as anticipated. And so while we're still going to present for you, I want to note that we will not be presenting the accountability ratings, but we will spend some time talking talking to you about what that process for determining those ratings looks like, procedurally how we will respond once those ratings are released, and of course, our continued ongoing efforts to use not only accountability ratings, but lots of other data points to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students, particularly when it comes to academic progress. And so Dr. Tiffany Hinton, I'm going to turn it over to you to start off the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Cashwell. The Virginia Department of Education is expected to release information on school accountability ratings shortly, including school accreditation, which is a key performance metric of Destination 2025, the division strategic plan. Our presentation this afternoon will provide an overview of the accreditation process and next steps. Early in September, we shared this timeline for when strategic plan updates would be provided. You'll note that various other presentations are planned throughout the year that will allow for in-depth discussions on indicators of the accreditation process. For example, in October, staff will provide specific updates on literacy and graduation and dropout rates. One of the strategic goals of Destination 2025 is to achieve academic excellence. Towards this effort, the plan includes implementation drivers or action steps that direct the school division to support schools with developing and implementing school quality plans to address accreditation and other goals. One of the metrics used to monitor our progress towards academic excellence are the school state accreditation indicators. Annually, schools receive state accreditation ratings based on their performance and progress on academic achievement indicators in English, math, and science. For English and math indicators, performance is based on the number of students who pass SOL or other approved state assessments or who demonstrate growth across multiple tests. High schools have two additional indicators, the graduation and completion index and dropout rate. Typically, chronic absenteeism, defined as the percentage of students missing 10% or more of the school year, is also included as an indicator in accreditation. However, due to the continued challenges associated with COVID-19, the state has waived this requirement for the 2022-23 school ratings based on data from the 2021-22 school year. It's also important to note that state accreditation was waived for all Virginia public schools in 2021 and 21-22 due to COVID-19 impacts on instruction the last 2 years. For each indicator, schools receive a level designation of 1, 2, or 3 based on their performance or progress towards meeting established benchmarks, using either current year data or a 3-year calculation. A school's overall accreditation rating is based on the performance levels of the indicators. A school's overall accreditation rating is based on the performance levels of the indicators. Schools are accredited if each of the indicator is level 1 or 2. Schools are accredited with conditions if one or more indicators are at level 3. The Virginia Board of Education determines if any school is denied accreditation based on their corrective action plan implementation. At this time, Ms. Seeley, Director of Teaching, Learning, and School Quality, will share some of the efforts underway.
Good afternoon. The Henrico County Public Schools Department of School Quality will provide support to all schools in state and federal monitoring. The monitoring process for the 22-23 school year will include academic review, monitoring of level 2 and 3 schools, and federal monitoring, including school improvement grants. The Department of School Quality provides ongoing support for all schools, regardless of the level of their indicators. This summer, training was provided for schools in how to conduct the comprehensive needs assessment in order to determine the root cause of any data below the desired level. The teams also received training in how to write the school quality plan, including a SMART goal. This year, schools are asked to choose action steps to address the root cause that are rooted in research. Both training events included representatives from multiple HCPS departments in order to provide support for all areas of the plan. Teaching and learning, student support, exceptional education, and EDO staff were all available to provide resources and support to school teams. The school quality partnership with these departments will continue throughout this year. We will also continue to provide a variety of ongoing support specific to the needs of each school. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to Scott Thorpe, Director of Elementary Schools.
Good afternoon. This year's accreditation ratings are another data point to help us target resources and interventions for students. Henrico County Public Schools has been focused on addressing learning gaps that emerged during and in the wake of the pandemic. The federal pandemic relief funds made available over the last few years have been leveraged in a wide variety of ways, including addressing missed learning and mitigating the academic impacts of the pandemic on our students. This slide highlights some of the ways in which Henrico County Public Schools has leveraged those funds for student recovery. Elementary leaders, teachers, staff, and students have started this school year with hope, energy, and a committed focus on growth. One focus of our work in elementary is centered around having a strong, positive school culture in which every student can be engaged and grow. Toward that end, we are excited that the number of elementary schools implementing positive behavioral systems, interventions, and supports has increased from 16 elementary schools last year to 31 elementary schools this year. Additionally, in many schools, students are engaging in using data to create and monitor their own academic and social goals. Our elementary learners are also engaging in community building activities throughout the school day, which strengthens a sense of connection and belonging in our schools. Our actions towards community building, as well as PBIS, connect to implementation drivers within our Destination 2025 goal, having an inclusive, safe, and supportive climate. Moreover, we are committed to professional learning and building the capacity of all teachers and support staff. Elementary staff have begun and will continue to learn and grow as a community of practice around the instructional model, focusing on design, deliver, assess, and a learner-centered environment. As a part of this ongoing training, evidence, including lesson plans, walkthroughs, formative assessments, observations, and student artifacts, will be used to guide reflection, dialogue, and growth. We recognize that the impact that learning experiences beyond the traditional day can provide. Many elementary schools have before and after school enrichment clubs, and several schools are planning or implementing after school programming to target skill deficiencies. Furthermore, our elementary schools have a laser focus on science. Leaders and teacher teams are re-engaging students with scientific and engineering practices, and specifically carrying out investigations. And while Science K-5 is a priority, we also will reinforce the skills that our current fifth graders explicitly learned last year in grade 4. Finally, additional efforts are being provided to our students receiving exceptional education services, including social emotional skill development, specialized reading and math instruction, and ongoing professional learning and capacity building with student support teachers. Dr. Dia Champ, Director of Middle School Education, will share highlights with our secondary schools.
Thank you, Mr. Thorpe. Secondary schools are off to a great start this school year. We have a concentrated focus on meeting the needs of our students and staff by focusing on professional learning, extended learning, and targeted supports as related to exceptional education and intervention. For professional learning, middle school principals are engaged in training led by Dr. Angie Thompson that focuses on team dynamics to build strong leadership teams to lead the work in moving schools forward to meet the diverse needs of our students. High schools, with support from Dr. Drew Baker and Dr. Thomas Farrell, are leveraging instructional leadership teams, which are teams of teacher leaders, coaches, and administrators who collaborate to focus on the improvement of daily Tier 1 instruction. Next, extended learning opportunities for students who need additional support continue to be a focus area in all secondary schools. Students have the opportunity to receive remediation, intervention, enrichment, and tutoring during multiple times of the day, such as during advisory, directed study, small groups, one-to-one, and after school. ESSER funding is being used for tutoring to continue the summer school expansion, for tutoring and to continue the summer school expansion by providing students with additional course options that were previously not offered at the secondary level. The Exceptional Education Department is leading a monthly professional learning community for secondary exceptional education administrators. During these monthly meetings, administrators will learn best compliance and instructional practices for students with disabilities. In August, these administrators participated in more than 16 hours of professional learning on topics related to case management, master scheduling, IEP meeting best practices, and positive behavioral interventions. Additionally, administrators were asked to design and deliver professional learning for their entire faculty based on the information they learned after reviewing individual student data during the workshop. Lastly, some secondary school administrators have participated in meetings with the Director of Exceptional Education, Dr. Katie Smith, and their level director, myself, or Dr. Thomas Farrell, to review discipline data from the 21-22 school year and develop school-based CCEIS plans. CCEIS stands for Coordinated Comprehensive Early Intervening Services. Administrators are reviewing individual student discipline data and the frequency of SBAR codes, which stands for Student Behavior and Administrative Response Codes, to identify students for proactive, positive behavioral supports rather than reactive for the 22-23 school year. We are looking forward to growing the expertise of our administrators in the area of special education. School-based intervention teams have already begun the work of connecting with students and families. For example, school teams visited homes or brought students and families into school prior to the start of the year to create plans for support at the start of the school year. Intervention teams will continue to identify and support students presenting academic or behavioral difficulties. For monitoring, the elementary and secondary directors meet with principals and administrative teams each month to discuss their school quality plan, data, walkthroughs, observations, and other needs and supports. The data collected through common assessments, benchmarks, performance tasks, and digital resources allow for the schools to hone in on individual students and have productive discussions concerning progress with level directors. This concludes our update, and we welcome questions at this time.
Thank you so much, team. I know there is always a lot of work going on with our teaching and learning team, as that is the business of our schools, but particularly in this last year, a lot of revamping and realigning, and I really thank you and all of your teams for your tremendous work. I'm going to start this way with Ms. Atkins. Do you have any comments or questions?
I do have a few. I know that I've seen some preliminary information so far. It is on par with my expectations and what I understand of where we are in our schools. I also want to just thank Mr. Thorpe, Dr. Champ, and Dr. Farrell for your tireless efforts. And in the way that you are helping to lead our schools, I want you to know that I see the results already, which lets me know more than just your tireless efforts. I believe that you are connecting minds and hearts. And I know that Reach to Teach are more than just 3 words to all 3 of you. And that when we move forward and making sure that we focus on developing relationships and connecting our students with teachers and teachers with parents, and the way in which you approach making sure that staff are okay makes a difference. So I want you to know that I've received that feedback. I see the successes, and I'm so very proud. So then I'll move on to my questions. I do want to learn a little bit more about the tutoring anytime, anywhere. If you could just share a little bit about that.
So we had some exciting news that we had some ESSER funding to provide tutoring anytime, anywhere. It's called FEV, F-E-V, tutoring. And our secondary schools, our principals are currently coming up with priority lists so that we can prioritize those students based on need, but they will have the opportunity to receive virtual tutoring or just call someone up to help them during certain times during the school day as well as after school. So families will begin receiving that information next week, and then we plan to start on October 3rd.
October 3rd. And so communication about that will go out through the normal means, through our communication teams and through principals, correct?
Yes, and families will be contacted directly about this service.
And then that service would be available to all schools in Henrico County?
All schools and principals are prioritizing their lists.
Thank you for that. And then the second question/comment was around reading. I tried to capture it as quickly as I can. Mr. Thorpe, you spoke to in elementary schools, I think you said a reading expansion from 16 to 30. Did I capture that correctly?
That was in relation to our schools that are participating in our positive behavioral interventions and supports approach. And so that is more supporting a safe, inclusive, and supportive school climate.
And so we started with 16, and then I think you said now we're at 30. Is that right?
We're at 31 schools,
31.
And then we, in order to meet the goal that we have set in our strategic plan, Destination 2025, all 46 of our schools will be implementing beginning next school year.
Again, that's another testament to hard work. So I just wanted to make sure I got my numbers right. So thank you so much again. Sure. And then I will speak specifically to my communities, because as we continue with the school year, there's a lot of excitement. We have hope, and collectively, we're moving forward with crafting a season of success. And so I just want to reiterate that our choices will continue to empower greater joy and purpose for each of us. Of course, individually, we'll have setbacks and comebacks, but collectively, I believe we are going to continue to craft a season of success and using hope and using our mind and hearts to make sure that we help one another, that we help this school system, and ultimately help our children. I also want to make sure that with the additional resources that our school division has, that we make sure that we take advantage of those, particularly what we've just heard around tutoring. We know that this is going to be a more rigorous year, and so it's going to be incredibly important that we take advantage of as many opportunities as we can, and then I will do my best to ensure that I communicate as often as I can what those communities are and how to have access to them. In closing, I'll just say that I'm incredibly proud of Henrico County across the board in these first few weeks. We're going to get additional information about accreditation and the data points within that. And that's just one piece, because we have an incredible start. I want us to continue to expand upon that and making sure that we look at a whole picture versus just one piece. Use that piece to energize us, use that piece to reflect upon how we can do things better, and more importantly, make sure that we stay involved, we stay engaged, and that we support the efforts that we're trying to do collectively. That's all I have at this time. Mrs. Shea, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins. Ms. Ogburn?
Sure, thank you. Just a couple of things that you mentioned well, various of you actually, when you mentioned community building. Is that within the school community or with the school, with the outside community, or is it both? And I'm curious about some examples of how that will happen.
Well, certainly both. The example or our talking point was really centered around the classroom community, and I'd be happy to give you an example of that, of what it looks like in an elementary classroom around our community building activities. So every Monday morning, the classroom teacher pairs up students, and they're going to be a pair for a week, and they have an opportunity to connect early on Monday about a topic of interest or about a topic that's familiar. And then throughout that day, throughout Monday, and then throughout the rest of the school days that week, that same pair are going to have an opportunity to connect about curricular topics. And so in doing so, they're going to have an opportunity that's a built-in forum for sharing critical thinking, collaboration, and communication, all attributes that we expect for a life-ready learner here in Henrico.
Okay, great. Now, how about outside of the community? That's not a focus, or
That's always a focus, Mrs. Ogburn.
Okay, but I'm just talking about, is it new, something different than what we're seeing now? I'm just curious.
In terms of
Really, any changes with that?
I could add to that, and I could see Adrian perk up a bit with that question, because certainly what was highlighted for this presentation, as Mr. Thorpe pointed out, was a lot about the classroom community building and school community building and really strengthening relationships to deepen learning. But we know that our deeper learning model calls for community supported learning, and that means leveraging the community at large. And so we heard a presentation a bit ago about the family and community engagement team and how they're sort of deepening their efforts for schools to actually quantify their community partnerships. So that's a newer process. I would say that's something new that's come forward. In fact, we just shared some messaging with schools about how to sort of formalize those partnerships they may have with their community and deepen conversations with whether it's a faith partner or their own parent-teacher organization. What does that look like? How does the school team, administrators, and others in the school really truly partner with some of these community organizations to meet school needs, and do it in a way that's a bit more formalized than has been in the past. And that helps certainly us quantify the impact of that centrally, but I think it also helps schools and partners really understand the many opportunities community-supported learning can bring.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate all that. And one of the things you had up in here, we talked about this earlier, but just some follow-up on what we discussed about science and a focus on science. And it occurred to me that one of the things I know that changes over the last few years with resources that teachers have with hands-on science, especially at the elementary level. It's not like we have labs. It's not, I mean, some schools do have labs and have equipment for those hands-on experiences, but are we going to be bringing in experts from the outside? How are we going to enhance that science curriculum? Because that's probably the hardest thing in an elementary school, for example.
So I'll respond to that question in two ways. So first, while all of our schools have robust materials to support what I talked about before, which was scientific and engineering practices, and certainly really labs or experiments. We also, at the district level, have provided schools within each grade and each science unit that's being explicitly taught and learned a list of resources that supports that aligned curriculum. And so certainly we're working with schools to make certain that they have those materials. A lot of those materials need to be refreshed because they are consumables. And so making certain that kids have everything that they need for these experiments that support the standards at the rigor of the standard. Additionally, now with our world being in a different place, we have field trips that support science.
Right.
I'd be happy to reference one. Our fourth graders this year are participating on a trip into the James River, where that's going to provide them with experiential learning that supports the skills and standards that they're learning in the classroom. And so that background building experience, whether we've got experts from Virginia Science Center coming into our schools, or whether we're going out and experiencing science, we're doing both, and we have the ability to do both now.
Which is so awesome, and I want to key in on one thing that you said, all schools. equipped the same way. That's so important. It really, really is, because we want to be sure that this is available to everyone.
If I could capitalize on that point, because I want to brag, there's so many great things to brag on the team, but not only looking at making sure resources are available to all schools, but Mr. Thorpe mentioned the fourth grade experience out on the James River, and traditionally we have had a few schools participate. Coming up this school year, all schools, all fourth grade students will have that experience, because we know how important hands-on learning is and getting to learn with our experts like those with the James River Association. So they've done a fantastic job creating a situation where we can get all of our fourth graders to experience that in person. So that was a big win, and to your point.
And I think that's so important. We've been making steps towards this for a long time, and I think it's the focus that things be available to all of our students. And I say this all the time, is we want to open up opportunities for our students for more learning. And some kids learn in different ways, and having that hands-on opportunity, I think, is so important. So I'm really glad to hear that. I want to follow up on a question that Ms. Atkins asked about the tutoring. Who is, I know we've got the funding, you explained it, but how are we staffing our tutoring? I'm curious if that is an opportunity for our retirees, but how are we staffing? Who's answering the phone when the kids call?
There's two ways we offer remediation and tutoring. I can see lots of experts coming up at once.
They're all going,
because
okay,
it crosses
which one has
several
to answer
areas.
this question?
So we offer, our schools will tailor tutoring and remediation programs on site, whether it's embedded in the school day or after school. And a lot of times it is retirees or temporary staff. Sometimes classroom teachers take on those responsibilities outside of the school day for pay. And so that's one element. I think what you might be asking about was the FEV tutoring program, which is similar to, in prior years, the school division may have had subscriptions to Homework Hotline or those sorts of things where it's an outside resource.
Oh, okay.
But we pay for the subscription, and families can tap into that. And those programs have become so much more sophisticated over the years. I think when I was in the classroom, it was a number kids could dial. They got a card that went home, and you got a teacher on the other line. And so this offers a similar type of support, but
it is
more
an
interactive.
outside resource. It's not one that we're.
In addition
Okay,
to our
gotcha.
in-house
Okay.
tutoring programs where students are prioritized based on their needs, and those will run at different times in each building depending. Did I cover all of those pieces?
I believe you did.
They're all looking at each other going, I'm not really sure.
The only other point that I would add with the FEV tutoring piece there is that we are starting obviously with a very targeted group and hope to grow that to the availability of all of our students. And then looking at when that could potentially take place. That could be during the instructional day, that could be at a daycare, that could be later in the evening. And the best part about some of the partnerships like that particular group is that there's the parent connection there, that our parents are aware of what time that our child would be engaging with these tutors, and we get reports, so we would know, were they there, were they not there, and we're able to keep track of that. And then the partnership with the school district in terms of the targeted types of things that the students would be doing is also great, because you're using county-related materials and such. So that's a big plus for a group like this.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for all this information. My only other comment is that I've been hearing this everywhere I go, that there's such a positive energy. People are finally like, okay, we see the light at the end of the tunnel, back to the way we were, so to speak. I'm not sure any of us will ever be the way we were pre-pandemic, but it's just such a positive energy that every one of us feel with the start of school. And I think we said this at the last meeting, that it's all hands on deck to get going and to do what we need to do. And that's from our classroom teachers to our administrators to our students and families, that prioritizes learning for these kids. So I am so excited to hear all of what we're doing because I see it's support, and that's supporting our kids. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Mrs. Shea?
Thank you, Ms. Ogburn. Ms. Kinsella?
Yes, thank you. And I guess my first thought is You know, when I looked at the preliminary data we got, back in early August, mid-August, while it speaks volumes, it certainly doesn't tell the whole story because, as all of us in education know, it's one day in time. And there are so many other factors that aren't there to explain, so many words that aren't there to explain, so many things that were highlighted during the pandemic that are contributing factors to perhaps an outcome just demonstrated by one number, you know. But anyway, I don't want to make excuses. I do just want to highlight that it is one day in time. And then I know that all of us during, prior to, during, and since, as we transition out of the pandemic, our concern has been, always has been, always will be, how do we improve student outcomes, right? How do we support our students, our families, our teachers, our staff? What more can we do? And I just want to thank the team because it's a lot of people, it's principals, it's teachers, it's feedback in our schools that have put together the presentation that we asked for, which is what we were all worried about. How are we going to help our students and how are we going to pay for it? And the great thing is that we do have, you know, extra funding to pay for it. And just thank you for the comprehensive plan. Because it just lets us know we're not just talking about a plan that we didn't show anybody. Here's the plan. Here are all the things. Well, matter of fact, it's not all the things, right? I think, Dr. Champ, can you just, is it just a highlight of things that we're doing in our schools? It's not comprehensive? If you could just confirm that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, it's been confirmed. It's not a comprehensive list. It's just an overall summary presentation of the plan. So I'm really grateful of the ways that we're going to try to support our students in the school. Who can speak to some of the ways we're going to support our students outside of tutoring, outside of the classroom? Because we know that if you could just highlight some of the counseling that our students receive, how we're supporting the social emotional component, because our teachers have become so responsible for everything our students bring in their backpack, if you will, all the things they're carrying to school, whether it's emotional trauma, whether it's food insecurity, no matter what the issues are that our students are carrying, how are we going to support them outside of the classroom, if you will?
Many of our students have so much going on, Ms. Kinsella. You're absolutely right. And so I'll use my elementary lens to respond to this question. And so once every 5 school days, every elementary classroom and the students within there, they receive a formal lesson from the school counselor, provided that is intended and designed to strengthen relationships, also build resilience, have a greater awareness of their feelings and others and other feelings. And then additionally, students who may require additional support, they have opportunities to have one-on-one school counseling or small group counseling around a similar topic. And at the elementary schools, with almost every one of our elementary schools having 2 school counselors, we have a robust opportunity to provide that service to students. And then, of course, I'm always looking for another opportunity to talk about the community building that supports, that goes on in the classroom, supported by the school teacher and support staff that helps toward that as well.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would imagine that some of the same supports are going on in the secondary. They just look different, for example, right? Dr. Champ, would you like to speak to a little bit? Okay, Dr. Hughes.
Yes, that's correct. And so on the secondary level, a lot of our SEL lessons are done during advisory. So I know we've talked about that before. We have a robust curriculum for middle school and then one for high school as well. And in addition, to answer your question, we have those school-based mental health providers, but we also work closely with community providers, Henrico Mental Health. So if we do have a student that we feel like needs services beyond what we're able to offer in school, then we do work closely with our partners to get families and students help outside of the school setting.
Well, thank you. It's just important that folks who may be listening understand all of the needs we need to support so that every student in Henrico Schools is successful. So thank you. And then next, when do we expect the additional detail for accreditation? Is it any time?
I was going to say.
I know we expected it today. I see Dr. Hinton coming forward. She may have more information on that front.
Yeah, I don't have any more information at this time. We're expected it today, so I anticipate that it would be any minute or later this week.
Okay, so our timeline, will we discuss it at a future meeting, Dr. Cashwell?
We certainly can, and certainly know as we receive key data points, we certainly share that with the board even, prior to a meeting, but be happy to address it. As you know, one of our key measures for the strategic plan is related to school accreditation, so I think there'll be a number of opportunities to discuss it again. But I think to your point, and I appreciated your comments around, the many things that go into responding to student needs. It's a data piece, and certainly we look to school accreditation ratings, but that's one of the many measures we're looking at to think about what are we doing to meet the needs of our students, support our teachers and their work with students, and those wraparounds. So I think there'll be a number of opportunities to continue this discussion as we look at various aspects of our strategic plan.
And then how will, because others in our buildings, our principals and their teams have seen preliminary data as well, we're certain they have the supports they need to monitor progress in their building. And I know each building looks different, but we have the support for all of our principals.
We do. So we offer a variety of supports to the principals and even our level 1 principals who aren't in any kind of state or federal monitoring. So monthly, we meet with any principals who will be level 2 or level 3 or federally monitored to help them. We help them with the technical process because sometimes it is very cumbersome, just the technical process of monitoring. But we also bring them together to collaborate on best practices around the areas that they're working to strengthen. So for example, on Tuesday, we had all of the principals together talking about their preliminary school quality plan, and they were grouped first by feeder pattern, and they were talking about what we call their non-academic domains. So they were talking about attendance, they were talking about what we call safe and orderly environment, so discipline, PBIS, and they were sharing their root cause with their data, and then sharing some strategies that they were going to use to address the root cause. And then we switched them to level, elementary, middle, and high school, and they talked about their academic domains. So they were sharing strategies for reading, math, and science based on their root causes and the best practices that they're using. So we continue those collaborative meetings. We also have from school quality specialists and coaches, as well as myself, that go out and work one-on-one with them to help them with their monthly meetings and make sure that they're collecting data that actually monitors what they're trying to improve. So we spend a lot of time with them and then customize supports when they feel like they need extra help around a particular domain. It's nice that I have the connection with TLI and that we can bring the specialist in and also any of the Division of Learning specialists to support any of the areas that they're working on. And that has been one of the positive comments that we've gotten from principals around our training is that we clustered the supports together and helped them build the plans around best practices.
Well, good. So not only is it collaborative, but we're also going to be consistent.
Yes.
I think that's a key word too, is that everyone is on the same page. Although it may look different, we're going to be consistent.
Yes.
That's important. And then lastly, I don't know if this one is for you, perhaps for someone else. We know we can't do this work alone. So in addition to the community engagement, like Ms. Ogburn said, how can our parents help support our students and our staff?
Good afternoon. So I'm excited to hear how much parent and family engagement has even come up in school quality. I know for our family engagement practices, we often are talking to parents about what it looks like to be a bit more involved. And so our family engagement model is really resource coordination, but also linked to learning approaches for engagement. And so how do you lean in when it comes to grades, assignments, and things of the sort? So even in our work of engagement that's really supportive for school quality, we're really talking to parents about what it looks like to consistently be involved and engaged in the academics for your child.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And just other than really just a big thank you, because knowing how we're going to support our students is everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsella. Reverend Cooper?
Well, everyone was so exhaustive, so I don't have that much. So I'm very appreciative of my peers' concerted effort, speaking specifically to addressing gaps, dealing with learning loss and recovery. Real quick, Mr. Thorpe, can you just give me an example, kind of like a comparative analysis of when we talk about climate and culture, our specific intentional focus, differentiate how we used to do that and how we're trying to do it now? Because I do think that climate and culture comprehensively on the aggregate is so imperative for setting the foundation for, the learning of our students.
Sure. So I'll respond to that question through the lens of PBIS. And one way to define PBIS is a really strategic way to commit to the teaching and reinforcement of student behavior through systems change. And so in a school that's implementing PBIS, we have school-wide behaviors that are common and standard and specific for every setting in the school: hallway, classroom, cafeteria, bathroom, recess. Students learn all of those, they're taught those, and then when they demonstrate the expected behaviors in all of those areas, then they are reinforced, whether verbally or through incentives. And so that is a school-wide. That's what we call a tier 1. That's for every student. And so if we have students who have difficulty responding to that tier 1 school-wide expectation, then we have a different approach and a different strategy and a different set of actions and different ways of teaching that and reinforcing that behavior in tier 2. And from time to time, we may have a small set of students who have difficulty responding to that other round of strategies and actions, and then we provide some tier 3 supports, all in an effort to help all students be successful. And so in a PBIS school, if it's implemented with fidelity, then we have clear plans and ways to support and monitor and respond to data in each setting of the school, grade level, so that we can support students to be successful. If we're finding out that we're having, after the first month of school, that we're having a number of incidents in the hallway, then we need to change our systems to support students being successful with the expectation. And so that's one way that it might look different now than it has in the past.
Yeah, so systematically speaking, in those various different environments, I guess it has to be, all staff have to be aligned.
Correct.
Because no one staff person is going to be in those areas at the same time. So I'm assuming that there has to be an intentional focus on alignment as far as the staffing's ability to deal with the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and have everyone on the same page.
No, I think that that's a great point that I failed to make, is that we also need to make certain that the staff responds in the same and standard way as well as we're expecting the students to respond. So that's correct. All in.
That's exciting. I mean, I can't wait to see data, that talks about prior performance and current performance. So thank you for that.
Sure.
And then real quick, Dr. Champ, if you could quickly just speak to me about the extended learning opportunities, because I think that that's important for our middle school students. We know that transitory time frame and those students that need the engagement, plus the opportunity specifically for some of my students in the Fairfield district, after school opportunities, extended day, not just behavioral, but also academically and social and emotional. Could you speak to that for me, please?
Absolutely. I'm going to start with the school day, starting with advisory. We've been consistent for the last couple of years with being able to target students based on need during that advisory block, and for teachers and administrators really looking at the data to determine what support students need by core content. And then even in the classroom, extended learning opportunities are happening, and we're not just focusing on the whole, but then we're also have been trying to be very systematic with implementing small group instruction so that we can target those students based off of their needs there as well. And then after school, we have the community learning centers that we have at Fairfield as well as at Wilder. So we're providing them with that opportunity to kind of merge and blend academics with fun. So they may have some tutoring, but then they actually get to have some exploratory options as well.
Especially for Fairfield and for Wilder, CLC has been very successful. I know that persons in the community are appreciative that those opportunities are there. So thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you. That's it for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Reverend Cooper. Well, as I go after Reverend Cooper, he even took off more things off my list, so I'm just left with rainbows and sunshines on my list. But I thank all my colleagues for their important and detailed questions. I'm very encouraged to see, as Mr. Thorpe referred to it, a laser focus on science and the return of hands-on science. I know there's been a real big push, as there should be, around literacy and numeracy, especially these past couple years, but I'm excited to see the hands-on component return to science as a science educator, you know, in more than just demos, but really using those hands-on investigations to prompt discussion and conclusions and all of those things that are the heart of science. As a science educator, I just think that science education in its true form is such an extraordinary opportunity to grow critical thinking and problem-solving perseverance and all these things that seep into the other parts of our instruction and really strengthen our students as a whole. And to Ms. Ogburn's point, while I won't call myself an expert, one of my favorite things to do in my classroom is classrooms is to come in as a guest scientist and do all sorts of fun science lessons. I've also heard really good feedback from our teachers this year and getting to experience it each day, being in different elementary schools, that things as simple as the arrangement of furniture this year and being able to arrange furniture like they would in pre-COVID years has really led to increased collaboration and community building, as Mr. Thorpe referred to, and improved instruction and being able to work together in small groups. And just thank you again to all of our team. As we look at our Henrico educators, they do more than just deliver content. We really urge them and scaffold them and support them in the way that they, instead of just delivering content, in building understanding with our students, which I think is so important. The tutoring and small groups and all that sort of thing have already been answered. I appreciate that. And so then just my last piece to encourage the whole team. I know we need data. I know we need data to see where our gaps are and how we're filling them and how we're moving the division ahead. And so as we collect that data and use it in meaningful ways, we also need to ensure that both our administrators and our teachers have the time and bandwidth also to do their job of teaching and learning, which is what will move the needle. And so there's certainly a balance there, and I appreciate your department keeping that in mind, as I know you do, as we look at how to move the division forward. So anything else, team? Thank you so much.
All right, appreciate again everyone who was a part of putting that presentation together, as is certainly reflective of the efforts of our caring educators in the classrooms, our administrators, and the central support teams. So we look forward to continuing to update the board on progress. All right, the next three items are an opportunity to review proposed revisions to 3 policies for which I'll be seeking your approval at our monthly meeting this evening. And for each of those 3 policies, I would be asking you to waive the 30-day review period, as these are minor revisions. And I'll go through each one and offer an opportunity to answer any questions you might have. The first one is a review of proposed revisions to policy P6-02-003, regularity of attendance. And this strikes information related to a COVID-19 waiver that expired on June 30, 2021, and is also reflects information that's reflected in another change that related to homebound students that's reflected in another policy. Sorry, that was a long way of saying something short. Any questions about that?
Colleagues, any questions or comments?
I have a request.
Yes.
I have a request. When I look at the bottom of this policy and actually shared it with committee, I would really like to ask for consolidation. At the bottom of this, there are all the cross-references to all these policies that deal with attendance. And I just think as we're trying to make, as we review all the policies and We're trying to make it more user-friendly, and having all of these attendance-related policies in so many different places really isn't user-friendly. So if I could just ask for some consolidation by the policy committee, that would be great.
That's great feedback and great suggestion, and I know you've been a great part of that policy committee. You and Mrs. Ogburn have worked tirelessly sitting through many committee meetings. As you know, we've got some work to do. We've come a long way, and hopefully making policies more transparent and getting some things up to date, but that's good feedback related to how we can continue to streamline policies. So they're easy to find, easy to understand.
Anything else? All right.
All right, the next one is proposed revisions to policy P6-03-007, withdrawals. This also strikes information related to a waiver of state regulations that has expired June 30, 2021.
Any questions, comments? All right.
Okay, and the next one are proposed revisions to policy P7-04-015, specialty centers, and this updates our list of specialty centers so that it's current with our current offerings and adds a note related to transportation being provided by the division.
Any questions or comments? All right.
Okay, and that concludes items from me.
Thank you, Dr. Cashwell. The next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Colleagues, do you have any unfinished business?
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'm going to make one quick announcement. No, it's not unfinished. I'm sorry, it'll be new. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, unfinished.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Ogburn.
Sorry. Jumped the gun just a little bit.
All right, hearing no unfinished business. The next item on our agenda is new business. Mrs. Ogburn, do you have any new business for us?
I just have a quick, I got an email that I wanted to share with everyone, just for your awareness. The robotics team at Deep Run has let me know that they will be at Short Pump Mall on this Saturday from 10 to 2. And the email says we'll have our robots from all 4 age levels of first, and that's the robotics competition that they do, as well as 16 stations around the mall with interactive STEM games for children of all ages, a scavenger hunt, opportunities to drive the actual robot, sounds so cool, and information about FIRST Robotics and their team. So just wanted to put that on everybody's radar. If you want to go play with a robot on Saturday, you have that opportunity.
And what time did you say that was
10
again?
to 2
10
this
to
Saturday.
2.
Yes.
Okay.
And they will have a tournament on November 19th at Deep Run. If you've never been to one of those, it's awesome. From 10 to 4, that's an all-day thing. But anyway, just wanted to pass that along for our good friends at Deep Run and the robotics team.
The blue cheese. All right, isn't that their name, Ms. Ogburn, the blue cheese?
Blue cheese.
The blue cheese.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ogburn. Anyone else have an announcement or new business? Hearing none. The last item on the agenda is the announcement of meeting dates. Of course, we'll have our evening meeting tonight at 6:30 here in Newbridge Auditorium. Following that, the School Bridge Board's next meeting will be a work session scheduled on Thursday, October 13th, 2022 at 1 p.m. The meeting time may be adjusted if needed. This meeting's adjourned.